It was October 2022 when Levi Davis walked out of the Old Irish pub in Barcelona and disappeared into the night. Just 24 years old, a professional rugby player once seen as a rising star. He'd played for teams like Bath and the Worthing Raiders, but a knee injury had sidelined his career. He had plans. He was supposed to move on after a few days, explore, heal, maybe even restart, but none of that happened. At around 10:05 p.m. on October 29th, CCTV captured Levi stepping out of the pub. He'd only been inside for 35 minutes, sipping a drink and watching a football match. He turned down the street and walked toward the port, and that was it. The last confirmed sighting of him. No one heard from him again. His friend Richard Squire, the last person to see him in Ibiza, sounded the alarm. Something felt wrong. Levi always stayed in touch, but this time there were no calls, no texts. At first, the response from authorities was sluggish, frustratingly slow, as if they didn't understand the urgency, as if another missing tourist was just another case in the shuffle. Then came a break, if you could call it that. Passengers aboard a cruise ship docked near Barcelona's port reported seeing a man struggling in the water. He was yelling for help in English. A life buoy was thrown, but by the time emergency services arrived, the water was empty. No one was found. The man's description matched Levi's. The timing lined up. His phone's last signal had pinged from the same area. Days later, his passport was found abandoned on a bench nearby, but there was no body. Just days before he disappeared, Levi had posted a video online. He looked scared. He said he was being blackmailed, that someone had secretly recorded him in a vulnerable moment, and now they were using that footage to control him. Private investigator Gavin Burrow dug deeper. Levi, it seemed, had become the target of a criminal group, possibly tied to organized crime. He had reportedly been followed, harassed. Investigators later learned that after Levi vanished, 38 contacts had been deleted from his Instagram account, as if someone had tried to wipe away the digital traces of who he was speaking to, or who might know something. Yet, despite all of this, the official theory remained the same. He drowned. No proof, no confirmation. Levi's mother, Yuri Davis, refused to accept that answer. She spoke out publicly, desperate for the world to listen. Her son had been struggling, yes, with finances, with discrimination, with pressure most couldn't understand. But that didn't explain the fear in his voice. In early 2023, police quietly announced the case would be considered inactive unless new evidence emerged. Then, something unexpected happened. On December 15th, almost 2 months after Levi vanished, a friend sent him a simple message. "Please come home. I love you and miss you." And then, read. That word hit like a thunderclap. Someone had seen it. Someone had opened the message. Was it Levi? Was he alive, hiding, trying to escape the people who had threatened him? Or was someone else holding his phone, reading through the messages, making sure no one got too close to the truth? The questions keep piling up. Why did Levi leave the pub so suddenly that night? Why the port? Why was his passport left behind? What really happened after he turned that corner and vanished into the darkness? It was a night meant to showcase greatness. March 4th, 1990, Loyola Marymount was hosting Portland in a conference tournament game, and the energy inside Gersten Pavilion was buzzing. The home crowd came out in full force to watch their star, Hank Gathers, the heart and soul of the team. At just 23, Gathers wasn't just good, he was phenomenal. He led the nation in both scoring and rebounding the season before, a feat so rare it was basically mythical. And with his explosive dunks, commanding presence, and undeniable charisma, Gathers wasn't just playing basketball. He was lighting up the court like it was his stage. Early in the game, everything seemed business as usual. LMU was running their famously fast-paced offense, and Gathers was in full beast mode. Then it happened. Hank caught an alley-oop, soared through the air, and dunked it with signature flair. The crowd erupted. But as he turned to head back down the court, no warning, no signal, he collapsed, right there on the hardwood in front of everyone. For a split second, people weren't sure what to make of it. This was Hank Gathers. The guy who could plow through defenses and drop 40 like it was a warm-up. But the panic set in fast. Players and coaches ran over. Medical staff followed. Gathers briefly regained consciousness, even reportedly said, "I don't want to lay down," but moments later, his body gave out completely. He was rushed to the hospital, but it was already too late. Hank Gathers was pronounced dead just over an hour later. The cause, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, a heart condition that, tragically, had already made itself known. Just 3 months earlier, Gathers had collapsed during another game and was diagnosed with an irregular heartbeat. He'd been prescribed medication, beta blockers, but they reportedly made him feel sluggish on the court. Whether his dosage was adjusted too aggressively or whether the risks were underestimated remains part of the lingering controversy. What's clear is this: the combination of intense athletic performance and a heart condition turned deadly in an instant. The aftermath was heartbreaking. The nation mourned. Sports networks aired tributes. Loyola Marymount, devastated but determined, made an emotional and inspiring run through the NCAA tournament. Bo Kimball, Hank's best friend and teammate, honored him in a now legendary way. He shot his first free throw of every game left-handed, just like Hank had been practicing to improve his form. And wouldn't you know it, he made every single one. The Gathers family later filed a wrongful death lawsuit, claiming Hank hadn't been properly monitored or cared for. Settlements were made, but no amount of money could replace what was lost. Loyola Marymount retired his jersey. A statue was eventually unveiled outside Gersten Pavilion, a permanent tribute to the player who gave everything he had every time he stepped on the court. Hank Gathers' death wasn't just a sports tragedy, it was a wake-up call about athlete health and the importance of listening to the body, no matter how strong or invincible someone may seem. He was larger than life, a powerhouse with a smile, and in just 23 years, he left behind a legacy that still echoes in gyms and hearts everywhere. It was July 14th, 2024, a day in China, and Pan Xiaoting was getting ready to go live. The 24-year-old influencer had built her name on mukbang, binge-eating massive quantities of food in front of a cheering audience. For many, it was entertainment. For Pan, it had become everything. Her identity, her career, her burden. That day, she sat before the camera like she had so many times before. Her table groaned under the weight of over 22 pounds of food, fried chicken fingers, platters of seafood, and slices of rich chocolate cake. Thousands were already tuned in, flooding the chat with laughing emojis, gifts, virtual roses. She smiled. She waved. She said hello. No one watching knew it would be her last stream. Pan hadn't always lived like this. She once worked as a waitress, just a young woman looking for a way forward. Then she stumbled into the world of mukbang, watching others eat on livestream. It started as a hobby, something harmless. But her bright personality, her willingness to take on shocking food challenges, they pulled people in. The views came, so did the money and the pressure. In time, she quit her job, rented a studio, bought equipment. She went all in. The more extreme her streams got, the more fans she earned. It wasn't long before Pan Xiaoting was one of China's most watched mukbang creators. Her face a regular presence on smartphones and tablets across the country. But while her popularity soared, something else was slowly breaking inside her. Her parents tried to warn her. They begged her to stop. They pleaded for her to see what was happening to her body. But Pan always brushed it off. "I can handle it," she'd say. "I know what I'm doing." They didn't know about the hospital stays, the internal bleeding, the pain that came once the cameras turned off. Or maybe they did. But what do you do when your child is chasing a dream that's slowly killing them? That day, the stream began like any other. 10 hours, she said. A full-blown eating marathon. Her audience cheered her on, completely unaware of the quiet desperation behind her determined grin. At first, she chatted and laughed, wolfing down piece after piece like she always did. But something was off. As the hours dragged on, her energy faded. Her smile faltered. Her breathing grew heavier. Her hands moved slower. Viewers began to worry. Comments filled the screen. "Pan, slow down. Take a break." But she didn't stop. She couldn't. And then, a sudden motion, a faint gasp. Her head dropped. The screen shook as she collapsed. For a moment, there was only silence. Then chaos, frantic comments, screams from the chat. But it was already too late. When emergency responders arrived, Pan Xiaoting was unresponsive. The autopsy revealed the horror. Her stomach had ruptured under the extreme pressure. Her digestive system, already weakened from repeated stress and previous injuries, couldn't handle the weight of one more challenge. She died on camera. Mukbang wasn't supposed to be like this. It started as a way to feel less alone. A stranger on your screen eating a meal with you, talking, laughing. But over time, the genre twisted into a spectacle of excess. A race to the bottom. Who could eat more? Who could shock the audience? Who could bleed for the algorithm and smile through it? China had already tried to fight back. In 2021, new laws cracked down on binge-eating content, but streamers like Pan found ways around it. Psychologists called it a dangerous game. Dietitians warned it was suicide in slow motion, but none of that matters when the comments keep coming, and the audience keeps cheering, and you feel like the only way to matter is to keep going. Pan's fans were heartbroken. Some posted memorials. Others shared her old clips, remembering her infectious laughter and warmth. But alongside the mourning came anger toward the culture, the pressure, the platforms that let this happen. Why did no one step in? Why do we keep watching people fall apart for our entertainment? Why is pain so easy to monetize? Her death wasn't just a tragedy, it was a mirror, a reflection of what this world does to those trying to be seen. Her story is more than just the end of a live stream. It's a cry for help buried under fried chicken and flashing emojis. It was a regular sunny day at the Sydney cricket ground, and Phil Hughes was out in the middle, doing what he did best, batting with quiet determination and his signature unorthodox flair. At just 25, Hughes had already seen the highs and lows of international cricket. He was once the youngest man to score back-to-back centuries in a test match for Australia, but inconsistency and fierce competition had seen him drift in and out of the national side. That day in November 2014, playing for South Australia in a Sheffield Shield match, he was looking to remind everyone, selectors included, that he still had plenty to offer, and he was doing a pretty convincing job of it. Hughes was on 63 and looking solid, working his way towards what felt like a career-defining innings. Then came the moment no one could have predicted. Sean Abbott, a promising young fast bowler for New South Wales, steamed in and sent down a short ball, a routine bouncer, the kind you see a dozen times in a match. Hughes shaped to play a hook or a pull, but in a cruel twist of fate, he misjudged the bounce. The ball slipped past the edge of his bat and struck him just below his helmet, on the unprotected area at the side of his neck. At first, it didn't look too serious. Players and spectators assumed it was a painful blow. Sure, but nothing life-threatening. Then, in a heart-stopping moment, Hughes collapsed face-first onto the pitch. The atmosphere at the SCG changed instantly. Medical staff rushed out, CPR was started, and the match was abandoned as an ambulance made its way onto the field. What followed was a nation holding its breath. Hughes was rushed to St. Vincent's Hospital and underwent emergency surgery. But the injury, a vertebral artery dissection leading to a brain hemorrhage, was catastrophic. 2 days later, on November 27, 2014, Phil Hughes was declared dead. He had never regained consciousness. His death sent shockwaves through the cricket world and beyond. Australia, a nation obsessed with the game, was stunned. Teammates, fans, and rivals alike mourned the loss of a young man who had so much more cricket and life ahead of him. It wasn't just about a cricketer dying. It was about a 25-year-old kid from a tiny town in New South Wales who had chased his dream all the way to the baggy green, only to have it all snatched away in the most tragic and freakish of circumstances. Tributes poured in from all corners of the globe. His test number, 408, was etched into hearts. Bats were placed outside front doors, heads were bowed in silence, and the cricket community came together in a way rarely seen. Even tougher blokes who never showed emotion found themselves choked up. It wasn't just sadness, it was disbelief. The incident also sparked serious conversations about player safety. Helmet designs were re-examined, with new models being developed to better protect the neck area. It was a tragic lesson, but one that led to changes aimed at ensuring no family or team would have to go through something similar again. Phil Hughes wasn't just a cricketer. He was a symbol of youthful passion, grit, and humility. He died doing what he loved, with dreams in his heart and a bat in his hand. And though he's gone, Hughesy will forever be remembered not just for the runs he scored, but for the smile he carried and the unity he inspired. It was July 2002. Former NBA star Bison Dell, once known as Brian Williams, had disappeared. A man who once stood beneath the flashing lights of packed arenas was now chasing peace on the open sea, far from the fame and pressure that once defined him. After walking away from basketball at just 30, despite millions still on the table, Bison set out on a different kind of journey. He wasn't forced out. He simply wanted freedom. He wanted life on his own terms. He was sailing aboard a 55-foot catamaran named Hakuna Matata, a name that promised no worries. With him were his girlfriend Serena Carlin, his older brother Kevin, and the boat's captain Bertrand Saldo. To the outside world, it seemed like a dream. 4 people, drifting under endless skies, surrounded by blue in every direction. But then, the silence came. By July 8th, all communication stopped. No more calls, no more updates, just nothing. Family and friends who were used to Bison checking in regularly started to worry. Days passed, then weeks, and then, like a scene from a thriller, Kevin Williams quietly returned to the U.S., alone. He didn't have answers, just evasive responses, suspicious behavior, and an unsettling calm. He gave no real explanation for where Bison, Serena, or Bertrand were. Then things got darker. Kevin had forged Bison's signature. He used his brother's passport. He'd purchased over $150,000 worth of gold in Phoenix. That's when the FBI stepped in. They found the Hakuna Matata, damaged, repaired, bullet holes hidden beneath quick patchwork. Something had gone terribly wrong. Under mounting pressure, Kevin told a story, one that sent chills down the spines of investigators. He claimed a fight broke out between him and Bison. Serena tried to break it up and was fatally injured. The captain wanted to report it. Bison, in a moment of panic, allegedly snapped. Kevin said he had to defend himself. And then, in the middle of the ocean, the bodies were disposed of, just gone. But even that story didn't add up. It had holes. It shifted. There was no physical evidence, no way to confirm a single word of it. And then, just like that, Kevin was gone too. In September 2002, he overdosed on insulin. He slipped into a coma and died shortly after, taking whatever truth he knew with him. Bison Daly's story still haunts the basketball world and everyone who followed his unusual journey. A gifted athlete, a champion with the Chicago Bulls, a man who could have stayed in the spotlight, but chose the unknown instead. His mother, Patricia Phillips, was left in the most impossible place, having lost both sons, and with no way to ever truly know what happened out there on that boat. Did Kevin really act alone? Was there a deeper darkness in the story that no one ever uncovered? What if Kevin had never returned alone? What if investigators had reached him just a little sooner? It was a quiet day in the Tibetan highlands, September 14th, 2020. In beautiful region of Aba, nestled in China's Sichuan province, a woman named Lamu began her morning like any other, with a song. To her 780,000 followers on Douyin, China's version of TikTok, Lamu was more than just an influencer. But behind those gentle videos was a truth she rarely spoke of. Lamu was living in the shadow of fear. She had married a man named Tang, and that marriage, far from the peace she shared online, was full of pain. In June 2020, she divorced him, but Tang wasn't done with her. He began harassing her relentlessly, demanding she return to him. She stood firm. She said no. That morning, she posted a video of herself singing a traditional Tibetan song, soft, serene, maybe even hopeful. No one knew it would be her last. Later that day, she went live. Her followers tuned in as they always did, expecting calm, comfort, familiarity. But then, the screen suddenly went dark. There was no picture, just sound, and the sound was terrifying. It was Tang. He had broken into her home, carrying a bucket of flammable liquid. He confronted her in the middle of the stream, and then he lit the match. The fire erupted. Viewers couldn't see it, but they could hear everything. Thousands of people, helpless, listening as a woman they cared about was burned alive in real time. Neighbors rushed in, desperately trying to save her. They smothered the flames and called for help. Lamu was taken to the hospital with burns over 90% of her body. For 2 agonizing weeks, she fought to survive. But on September 30th, she slipped away. When news of her death broke, it spread like wildfire. People were devastated, furious, heartbroken. Across China and beyond, fans flooded her Douyin account with messages of grief, love, and disbelief. How could something like this happen? How could a woman who had already escaped abuse be left so vulnerable? Tang was arrested and charged with intentional homicide. In October 2021, the court sentenced him to death, calling his actions extremely cruel and acknowledging the enormous public impact of the case. But for many, justice still felt far away. Lamu's death wasn't just a tragedy, it was a spark, a wake-up call. In 2016, China passed a law criminalizing domestic violence, but critics say it doesn't go far enough. Same-sex couples aren't protected. Emotional and financial abuse are still often ignored. And, culturally, many people are still told to keep it in the family, meaning victims rarely get the help they need. During her marriage, Lamu had gone to the authorities. She had tried to speak up, but her pleas were dismissed, written off as family disputes. That failure cost her her life. In 2020, China introduced a 30-day cooling-off period for couples seeking divorce. It was meant to reduce impulsive separations. But for women like Lamu, it's a dangerous delay, one that traps victims in relationships they're desperate to escape. A 2013 survey by the All China Women's Federation revealed that 1 in 4 married women in China have experienced domestic violence. In rural areas, it's even more widespread. There's no easy exit, no clear path to safety. After her death, activists, fans, and ordinary citizens pushed back against the silence. Her Douyin page turned into a digital memorial. Lamu's life was about resilience, simplicity, beauty in the everyday. But her death was a brutal reminder of what happens when systems fail the people who need them most. Football is often called the beautiful game, but on April 14, 2012, it delivered one of its darkest chapters. During a Serie B match between Livorno and Pescara, 25-year-old midfielder Piermario Morosini collapsed mid-play, turning an ordinary match into an unforgettable tragedy. Morosini, a hard-working and humble player known for his grit, suddenly went down on the pitch. He tried to stand, made a second effort, but then crumpled again. What began as a normal game quickly turned into a desperate race to save a life. The medics rushed in, CPR was administered, and the stadium atmosphere shifted from competitive excitement to total silence. Tension hung thick in the air as thousands of spectators and players watched helplessly. An ambulance was called, but things didn't go smoothly. A police car had parked in front of the stadium entrance, blocking the way. In a moment where every second mattered, precious time was lost as someone scrambled to move the vehicle. Morosini was eventually transported to Pescara's Santo Spirito Hospital, but it was too late. The young midfielder was pronounced dead shortly after arriving. His death was attributed to a rare and undetected heart condition, a cruel twist of fate for someone in peak physical condition. No previous symptoms, no obvious warning signs, just one silent failure in the system that couldn't be undone. News of Morosini's passing spread like wildfire, and within hours, Italian football shut down. All matches were suspended that weekend in a unified gesture of mourning and respect. Fans left flowers at stadiums, Players wore black armbands. Clubs posted heartfelt tributes. The entire country grieved for a man who had already endured more pain than most. Morosini's personal life was already shaped by loss. By the age of 18, he had lost both parents and a disabled brother. He was left with a disabled sister whom he supported. Football wasn't just a job, it was his escape, his therapy, and his mission. He played for several clubs, including Udinese, Bologna, Vicenza, and Atalanta, before landing at Livorno. Every match was played with heart. Every minute was earned. His story, even before that day, was one of perseverance and resilience. But the tragedy didn't end with his death. It sparked accountability. A formal investigation was launched into the circumstances surrounding the incident. In 2016, 3 doctors were convicted of manslaughter for failing to follow proper medical protocols during Morosini's collapse. The courts found they hadn't used a defibrillator correctly, something that might have made a difference. The case became a powerful catalyst for reform in emergency preparedness across sports leagues in Italy and beyond. Clubs reviewed their medical procedures. Stadiums reevaluated emergency access. People started paying attention. Tributes continued long after the match was over. Atalanta named a section of their stadium the Curva Pier Mario Morosini. The Italian Youth League created an annual award in his name, given to the most outstanding young player. One of the most moving gestures came from fellow footballer Antonio Di Natale, who vowed to financially support Morosini's sister so she would never be left alone or in need. Pier Mario Morosini may not have lifted major trophies or become an international superstar, but his story left a lasting impact. His name became more than just a line on a team sheet. It became a symbol of endurance, compassion, and the need for better care behind the scenes in professional sports. Though the match ended that day in heartbreak, his legacy lives on, reminding the football world that heroes aren't always the ones who score the winning goal. They're sometimes the ones who fight battles no one sees, both on and off the pitch. It was the early hours of January 5, 2006, in the quiet town of Bremerton, Washington, when 18-year-old Joe Pickler made a final phone call that would haunt everyone who loved him. Just hours before, he'd been out laughing, playing cards, and having drinks with friends. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But at 4:15 a.m., something changed. Joe called a friend, crying. He was clearly upset but promised he'd call back in an hour. That call never came, and after that, Joe was gone. Joe wasn't just any teenager. He had once been in the spotlight, a former child actor known for his roles in Varsity Blues and the Beethoven film series. But at 15, he stepped away from Hollywood. Fame never seemed to matter to him the way it did to others. He moved back to Bremerton in 2002, finished high school, and took a normal job at a call center. He lived alone, spent time with his pet guinea pig, and played Magic the Gathering. He wasn't lost. He had plans. Once his braces came off in a few months, he was heading back to Hollywood to restart his acting career. But those plans were never fulfilled. 4 days after that chilling phone call, on January 9th, his silver 2005 Toyota Corolla was found abandoned near the Port Madison Narrows. Inside were his clothes and his phone, but his wallet and keys were gone. Most unsettling of all, a 2-page note was found offering his possessions to his younger sibling. Some took it as a goodbye, but his family didn't buy it. His mother, Kathy, couldn't accept the idea that Joe had taken his own life. There was no final message, no clear goodbye. His apartment lights had been left on, the door was unlocked, and Joe, who was always careful and responsible, wouldn't have just walked out like that. The night before, he was joking and playing cards. Nothing about his behavior pointed to despair. His sister Shauna couldn't shake the feeling that something else had happened, something darker. Police leaned toward the theory that Joe had jumped from a nearby bridge. They pointed to the emotional phone call, the note, the abandoned car, but when Detective Robbie Davis admitted there was no hard evidence to support the theory, not even a scent trail, questions only grew. Extensive searches yielded nothing, no body, no real clues, nothing but a silence that stretched for years. To Joe's family, the investigation felt rushed. Kathy believed critical steps were missed. His apartment wasn't thoroughly searched. His belongings weren't fully accounted for. Some of Joe's things, including his treasured card collection, were never found. What had happened? Had someone taken something more than just his possessions? As time moved on, the case faded from the public eye, but for Joe's family, the pain didn't fade with it. In 2008, Shauna said what so many families of the missing feel. People say time heals, but time only helps when you have answers. The loneliness of not knowing, of wondering if Joe was cold, scared, alive, or gone, was unbearable. Kathy never stopped. She kept Joe's memory alive, sharing his story, supporting other families in similar pain. She criticized how the case was handled, but acknowledged that the spotlight on Joe's disappearance had led to better handling of missing persons cases in Bremerton afterward. It was a small comfort in a sea of grief. Fans never forgot him either. On anniversaries of Varsity Blues or during random moments online, people still bring up his name. They remember his smile, his charm, and the strange, aching mystery of how he vanished. It was a quiet evening in Suffolk, Virginia, May 16, 2024. Inside one home, something was unfolding, something that would leave a family shattered. 17-year-old Raleigh Freeman III, known to fans as Rio Honcho, was live on social media again, a rising voice in the local rap scene. His performances had energy that caught fire. With nearly 28,700 Instagram followers and tracks gaining traction on Spotify, Rio was building something big. That night, his stream started off like so many others. He was charismatic, confident, and like many young rappers in his lane, he sometimes flashed props to fit the aesthetic: cash, fashion, and that night, a handgun. It wasn't new, he'd posed with one before, but this one was different. Real, with a green laser sight and flashlight. In the video, Rio waved it casually, almost playfully, as if the weight of what he was holding didn't register. He laughed. He spoke boldly into the camera. Then, he pointed the gun at his head. One breath, one trigger pull, a bang. The phone hit the ground, and everything stopped. At first, no one knew what to believe. Was it a stunt? A special effect? Had Rio just pulled off a shocking moment to keep his audience guessing? But as seconds turned to minutes, the realization hit like ice. This wasn't a performance, it wasn't a joke. Rio had accidentally shot himself. Live, paramedics arrived quickly. He was rushed to the hospital, but the damage was done. The moment that started as just another live stream had ended with the loss of a young life, just like that. The news tore through the community. But no one felt it harder than his mother, Monica Savage, a single mother, a woman who had poured everything she had into raising her only son. In a heart-wrenching interview, she recalled the moment she found him. Her voice broke as she cried out, "I just want my baby back." It was the kind of grief that lives deep in the bones, a kind that never fades. His cousin launched a GoFundMe to help cover the funeral. At his school, the halls felt heavier. Teacher Cara Dorsey shared memories of him online, urging students to chase their dreams the way Rio had. But even as the community mourned, questions began to rise, questions that needed answers. How did a 17-year-old get his hands on a loaded firearm? Why was it accessible? Why wasn't it locked away? Authorities opened an investigation, determined to understand what had gone so wrong. The footage, undeniably live, spread fast. Some watched in disbelief. Others criticized those who had doubted it was real in the first place. It was tragic, raw, unfiltered. The internet can sometimes blur the line between spectacle and reality, and this time, the cost of that blur was a human life. Rio's music still echoes in the headphones of those who followed him. Tracks like Money Getta, Bag Talk, and DOA pulse with rhythm, ambition, raw honesty. His Spotify profile even hinted at his love for pop culture, with a photo of actress Mia Goth standing in as his cover art, showing his playful, creative side. He wasn't just trying to be a rapper, he was one, with a voice, a vision, a future. Gun safety experts have long warned about accidental firearm deaths, especially among teens. Many of these tragedies are preventable. Simple precautions like locking weapons away, keeping ammunition separate, educating families on firearm risks. These things can save lives, but too often they're ignored until it's too late. Kelly Drain, a researcher in gun policy, spoke out after Rio's death. She stressed that tragedies like this are not inevitable. They're not fate. They're failures. Failures of oversight, of access, of awareness. And now, all that's left is a void. A boy with dreams, gone. A mother with no son. A mic left silent. Mark Vivien Foe's sudden death on June 26, 2003, during a FIFA Confederations Cup semi-final between Cameroon and Colombia, was one of the most shocking and tragic moments in football history. Foe, a talented midfielder who had played for clubs like Lens, Manchester City, and Lyon, was a force to be reckoned with on the pitch. But on that fateful day, he collapsed without warning, leaving fans, teammates, and the football world at large in complete disbelief. The match, held in Lyon, France, was an exciting one. Cameroon was facing Colombia in what was supposed to be a thrilling encounter for the semi-finals. Foe, who had been playing with passion and energy, suddenly fell to the ground in the 72nd minute of the game, seemingly out of nowhere. At first, it seemed like he might have just tripped or been winded, but when he didn't get up, concern quickly spread through the stadium. His teammates rushed to his side, and medical staff arrived almost immediately, trying to resuscitate him. Despite their best efforts, Foe was rushed to the hospital, but tragically he was declared dead shortly after arriving. The cause of his death was later revealed to be a heart attack brought on by hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, a condition where the heart muscle becomes abnormally thick, making it harder for the heart to pump blood efficiently. This condition is often undetected until a tragic event like this occurs. Foe had not shown any signs of illness prior to the incident, and there were no warning signals during the match that suggested something was wrong. The suddenness of his death sent shockwaves through the football community, and his passing left an enormous void in the hearts of fans and fellow players alike. What made this tragedy even more devastating was Foe's relatively young age. He was only 28 years old at the time of his death. He was in the prime of his career, playing for one of the top teams in Europe, Lyon, and representing his country at a major international tournament. His untimely passing made many reflect on the vulnerability of athletes who, despite their physical strength and abilities, are not immune to health issues that can be invisible to the naked eye. Foe's death also brought to light the importance of better screening for heart conditions in athletes. In the aftermath, many football organizations and medical teams began to place more focus on ensuring players undergo thorough heart checks to avoid such tragedies in the future. It raised awareness about heart-related issues in sports, especially among young athletes who may not display symptoms but could still be at risk. The reaction to Foe's death was overwhelming. The world of football mourned the loss of a player who was not only talented, but also well-liked and respected for his professionalism and humility. His teammates, including his close friends and the coaches, spoke of his kindness and dedication. They remembered him as someone who always gave his best, both on and off the field. Fans from all over the world paid their respects, with many noting that Foe had been a true ambassador for the game, bringing people together with his passion and skill. In the years following his death, several tributes have been made in his honor. The Cameroon national team, as well as his former clubs, have held memorial events, and his memory lives on in the hearts of those who knew him and those who admired his play. Foe's passing is a stark reminder of how fragile life can be, even for those who appeared to be in peak condition, and it serves as a poignant lesson for the sports world on the importance of health screening and monitoring for athletes. The tragedy of Mark Vivien Foe's death was a moment of great sorrow for the football world, but it also highlighted the need for greater awareness and action in safeguarding the health of athletes. His legacy, though marked by sadness, continues to inspire conversations about the importance of health, the unpredictability of life, and the enduring impact one person can have on a sport. It was July 6, 1983, in Cocoa Beach, Florida. Tammy Lynn Leopard, just 18 years old, vanished without a trace. No goodbyes, no explanation, just silence. Tammy wasn't just another teenager. From a young age, she lit up every room she walked into, dominating the pageant circuit with an almost eerie ease, 280 titles out of 300 competitions. She began modeling early, then transitioned into acting, quickly landing small roles in films like Little Darlings and the iconic Scarface. In that film, she appeared briefly, bikini-clad, a distraction in a tense scene, but it was a foot in the door. She was on her way. And then, something changed. It began subtly after she filmed Spring Break earlier that year. At a cast party, something happened. Something that shook her. She wouldn't talk about it, wouldn't name names. But from that night on, she was different. Skittish, paranoid. Her mother, Linda, saw the fear creeping in. Tammy would barely leave the house. She began avoiding people, even those closest to her. When Linda asked if someone was trying to hurt her, Tammy only said yes, but nothing more. No details, just fear. Despite the anxiety gnawing at her, Tammy traveled to Miami to film Scarface. She stayed with a trusted family friend, Walter Libowitz. But when they filmed a scene with artificial blood, she completely unraveled, burst into tears and had to leave the set. Walter, concerned, called Linda. "You need to get her help," he said. Back home, things got worse. Tammy became convinced someone was poisoning her. She wouldn't eat or drink anything she didn't prepare herself. The fear had taken over. On July 1st, it boiled over. She smashed windows in her own home during a terrifying outburst. And after a heated confrontation with her friend, Wing Flanagan, Linda had no choice. She took Tammy to a mental health center. They ran tests, no drugs, no alcohol, and after 72 hours with no diagnosis and no answers, Tammy was released. Still afraid, still hiding something. She told her mother that she'd seen something horrible at a party, something she wasn't supposed to see. But again, no names, no specifics. Just that lingering terror in her voice. Some believe she may have witnessed criminal activity, something involving powerful people, maybe even money laundering. Whatever it was, she never spoke it out loud. And maybe that silence was her attempt to protect herself. 5 days later, she left the house. She was with a man, reportedly named Keith. Tammy had mentioned being afraid of him, but he was never officially named a suspect. He told police they got into an argument during their drive, and Tammy asked to be dropped off near the now infamous Glassbank building in Cocoa Beach. It was only 5 miles from her home. That was the last confirmed sighting of her. Surveillance showed her standing alone in the parking lot, unsure, looking around. She then walked to a nearby gas station and made a desperate attempt to call her aunt and a close friend. Urgent messages, but she never got through. And after that, she was gone. No more sightings, no calls, no body. She was last seen wearing a denim skirt and a blue shirt with flower appliques. Some reports claimed she was barefoot, which was uncharacteristic for her. Just another strange detail in a story full of them. Years passed. Leads came and went. One suspect, Christopher Wilder, a charming predator who lured young women with promises of modeling fame, was considered. He was active in Florida around the time Tammy disappeared. Given her career path, the theory made sense, but no solid evidence ever connected them. Wilder was killed in a shootout with police in 1984. Another theory pointed to John Brennan Crutchley, a convicted kidnapper with a twisted history and ties to other missing women. He too became a person of interest. But again, no link, no proof, just shadows. Tammy's mother, Linda, held on to her own chilling belief that her daughter knew something dangerous, that her disappearance wasn't random but targeted. Tammy had spoken cryptically about illegal activity, and her fear had been real, not imagined. But without answers, it remained a terrifying what if. The case has remained unsolved ever since. Investigators released age-progressed images, hoping someone, somewhere might recognize her. Her DNA is on file, but her dental records and fingerprints, lost, misfiled. A cruel twist in a case already riddled with dead ends. What happened that day in July? Did Tammy meet someone who meant her harm? Did she run from something she couldn't outrun? Or did she simply know too much and pay the price for her silence? No one knows. It was January 27th, 2021 in the small town of Smolensk, Russia. Inside a cramped, chaotic apartment, 60-year-old Yuri Duden, lovingly known to the internet as Grandpa, sat in front of a camera once again. For many viewers, Yuri had become a familiar face as part of a controversial YouTube channel called First Step. But behind the screen, this wasn't just another quirky live stream. This one would end in silence. The stream started like so many others. About 150 people tuned in to watch. But they weren't just passive viewers, they were participants. As donations rolled in, so did demands. Drink more, take another shot, prove yourself, and Yuri, ever the crowd favorite, raised the bottle. They egged him on. They paid to watch. Almost 1.5 liters of vodka disappeared down his throat, glass after glass. The chat moved fast. Donations ticked up. But Yuri, he was fading. His words slurred. His body swayed. And then he dropped. No cut to black, no end screen. Just Yuri, lying still on the floor. For a long time, his lifeless body remained on camera. The stream didn't stop. Neither did some of the comments. While a few viewers panicked and begged someone to call for help, others kept joking, acting like it was just part of the twisted show. A dark, sickening spectacle. By the time emergency services reached his address on Udarov Street, it was too late. He was gone. The channel's host, a 39-year-old man known only as JEA, had built his following on what's known in Russia as trash streaming. These streams exploit people who are homeless, addicted, or just struggling, and dangle money in front of them to do increasingly dangerous and humiliating things. Live for an audience. The more painful, the more extreme, the more money rolled in. Yuri had become a fixture, a character, a mascot. Viewers called him Grandpa with fondness, but few stopped to think about what it meant that he kept coming back to drink himself sick for their entertainment. Over time, the pressure to do more, to go further, only grew. That night, it reached a breaking point. As the shock of Yuri's death spread, authorities moved in. Russia's investigative committee launched a criminal case, targeting the organizers behind the stream. Prosecutors began combing through footage, messages, and viewer donations to piece together the full story. What emerged was deeply disturbing, a pattern of reckless endangerment and casual cruelty, all for clicks and cash. Yuri's death hit a nerve. Russian Senator Alexei Pushkov went public, calling for an immediate crackdown on trash streams. He demanded legislation to ban this kind of content, arguing that the internet had become a playground for exploitation, where vulnerable people were used up and discarded. If nothing changes, if these platforms keep prioritizing engagement over ethics, if society keeps laughing while people fall apart on camera, then Yuri won't be the last. And next time, it could be someone else's grandpa. By 1994, Ayrton Senna was more than a racing driver, he was a global icon, a 3-time Formula One world champion. He was known for his blinding speed, razor-sharp focus, and an almost spiritual connection with his car. Fans admired him. Rivals respected and often feared him. That year, Senna had made a high-profile move to the Williams team, aiming to return to the top after years of dominance with McLaren. But no one could have predicted that the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola would become one of the darkest weekends in the sport's history, one that would change Formula One forever. The weekend began with tension in the air, and it only got worse. During Friday practice, Brazilian driver Rubens Barrichello Senna's countryman and rising star suffered a horrifying crash. His car hit a curb, launched into the air, and slammed into the barrier. Miraculously, Barrichello survived, but the mood shifted. Then on Saturday, tragedy struck. Austrian rookie Roland Ratzenberger crashed during qualifying after a front wing failure sent him into a wall at nearly 200 miles per hour. He died on impact. It had been over a decade since F1 had lost a driver during a race weekend, and the paddock was shaken. Senna, visibly disturbed, spent time alone, speaking to friends and expressing deep concern over safety. Some say he even considered not racing, but Ayrton Senna was a competitor to the core, and on Sunday, May 1st, he lined up on pole position. As the lights went out and the race began, it was immediately chaotic. A crash on the opening lap brought out the safety car, a rare sight at the time which kept the field bunched up and slowed down. When racing resumed, Senna led the charge. Then, on lap 7, it happened. Approaching the high-speed Tamburello corner, a long, flat-out bend, Senna's Williams veered off the racing line and shot straight into the concrete wall at over 190 miles per hour. There were no tire barriers, no room for error. The impact was violent and instant. Track marshals and medics reached him quickly. The scene was grim. A piece of suspension had pierced his helmet, causing severe head trauma. Though his heart was still beating, the situation was critical. He was airlifted to Bologna's Maggiore Hospital, but a few hours later the news everyone feared was confirmed. Ayrton Senna had died. He was just 34 years old. The racing world stood still. Broadcasters cut to somber coverage. Fans wept. Rivals mourned. Brazil declared 3 days of national mourning. This wasn't just a racing accident, it was the loss of a hero. An investigation followed. It revealed that Senna's steering column, which had been modified to improve comfort, had likely failed, cracking under pressure and causing the car to lose control. Whether mechanical failure, driver error, or an unfortunate combination of factors, one thing was certain: the sport had lost one of its greatest. But Senna's death was not in vain. His accident became a catalyst for the most sweeping safety reforms in F1 history. Car construction was overhauled, circuits were redesigned with more runoff areas and barriers, and the FIA created new standards that prioritized driver protection above all else. The HANS device, mandatory crash tests, better helmets, all of it emerged from that dark weekend in Imola. To this day, Ayrton Senna remains a legend, not only for what he achieved, but for what his loss inspired. He was fast, fearless, and deeply human, and even in death, he helped save lives. It was April 2019 when Zoe McClellan vanished. One day, she was a familiar face on screens, known for her roles in NCIS, New Orleans, and JAG, and the next, she and her 8-year-old son Sebastian were simply gone. No warning, no final message, just silence. And what made it even more chilling was the timing. Right in the middle of a bitter, spiraling custody battle with her ex-husband, Jean-Pierre J.P. Gillin. Zoe had been fighting for custody since 2017. Tensions had already reached a boiling point when she took Sebastian to Toronto, despite a court order requiring them to stay in the U.S. It wasn't technically illegal, but it broke trust. Then came more serious allegations. Zoe accused JP of harming their son, making an already messy situation explode into chaos. By April 11th, all communication stopped. JP, who had once co-parented with her despite the strain, hadn't heard from Zoe or Sebastian in weeks. It was as if the earth had swallowed them whole. Worried and confused, JP alerted the authorities. Weeks turned into months, and still, nothing. It wasn't until May 2021, over 2 years later, that a warrant was issued for Zoe's arrest for child custody interference. Meanwhile, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children officially listed Sebastian as missing, last seen in mid-April 2019. As the search intensified, disturbing threads began to unravel. JP, who had been arrested based on Zoe's accusations, was cleared after 4 months in jail. But the damage had been done. He later learned that Zoe had spoken to a prison guard about how to handle him, and that wasn't the only red flag. Sometime during the custody chaos, Zoe had reconnected with Charlie Barber, a man she had met years ago on the set of NCIS. At first, he thought he was simply helping a struggling mother. Zoe told him she was fighting for a child who had suffered trauma. He opened his home in Franklinton, Louisiana, to her and Sebastian. At first, everything seemed fine. Too fine, but little by little, cracks began to show. Zoe told Charlie that Sebastian was terrified of his father and refused to be around men. Yet, Charlie never saw that fear. Sebastian played with his son, laughed, joked, and showed no signs of distress. Zoe had strict rules. No one was allowed to cut Sebastian's hair due to past trauma, but Charlie saw the boy's hair grow long and untouched. No reaction. The narrative Zoe painted didn't match reality. Then came the stranger moments. Zoe said she had psychic abilities, claimed money would just appear in her account. She used multiple names and even checked into a hotel under the alias Sarah Chandler, telling Charlie she was in danger. One time, at a hotel pool, Sebastian wanted to go play video games inside. Zoe asked Charlie to accompany him, even though she'd said her son didn't trust men. That contradiction hit hard. What else wasn't true? By April 2020, Charlie had seen enough. He pulled back, uneasy with the inconsistencies. After some time, he reached out to JP on Facebook, sharing everything. That's when he discovered JP's lawyer had already been compiling similar accounts. Charlie wasn't alone. Other people had noticed the strange behavior, the shifting stories, the red flags. It became clear that Zoe had one goal: to keep Sebastian away from his father at all costs. She had told Charlie as much, but how far would she go to make that happen? Since 2020, Zoe has vanished completely. Charlie never heard from her again. Their last phone call was filled with emotion, confusion, and the sense that something final was happening. Her social media accounts remain frozen in time. No one knows where she is, or where Sebastian is. Now, nearly 6 years later, the questions hang in the air like smoke. Is Zoe hiding intentionally, convinced she's protecting her son? Or did the narrative she created start to crumble, forcing her deeper into the shadows? Was Sebastian really in danger? Or was he a pawn in a much more complex story? And if Zoe is ever found, what truth will finally come to light? It was a quiet summer evening in Cuzhou, China, July 20th, 2021. 23-year-old Xiao Qiumei, known online as Xiaoing, remained in her crane cabin, taking in one last peaceful moment after a long day. To her thousands of followers on Douyin, she was more than just a crane operator. She was a force, a young mother of two, confidently working one of the most physically demanding and male-dominated jobs out there. Through her videos, she gave people a rare window into her world, perched hundreds of feet in the air, laughing, dancing, explaining the technical parts of her work with ease. Her joy was infectious, her courage inspiring. That evening, as golden hour bathed the horizon, Xiao decided to record one final clip before heading home. Just a short video, just a little slice of her life. She smiled into the camera, cheerful and proud, her voice carrying softly over the wind. Then, something changed. The footage suddenly shifted, blurry flashes of metal, a sudden jolt, and then a scream so sharp, so real, it sliced through the quiet, and then silence. Xiao had fallen 160 feet from her crane to the unforgiving ground below. When emergency responders arrived, it was too late. She was pronounced dead at the scene. News of her death hit the internet like a wave. Fans were stunned, heartbroken, confused. How could someone so full of life, who had just smiled into the camera minutes before, be gone? Some began sharing the footage of her fall, fueling online speculation and sorrow. Was she holding her phone? Was it a tragic mistake caught on camera? Or was something more to blame? Her family, broken with grief, spoke out. They insisted Xiao wasn't filming when she fell. She had always been responsible, they said, always kept her phone tucked safely in her bag while working. According to them, the accident happened not because she was distracted, but because of a missed step while climbing down from the crane. A slip, a single misstep in a job that leaves no room for error. And just like that, a mother, a daughter, a wife, was gone. Her funeral was held in silence and simplicity. Her ashes rested on a small table beneath an umbrella, surrounded by those who loved her most. No fanfare, no spotlight, just sorrow and the memory of a life that had burned so brightly. Authorities launched an investigation into the accident, but no further details were released. Questions lingered in the air like dust on a hot summer wind. Were safety protocols ignored? Was this preventable? And beneath it all, another question whispered across social media. What is the cost of chasing connection online? Xiao's story became more than just news. It became a reckoning, a reminder that real lives lie behind the videos we watch, the likes we tap, a reminder that influence comes with invisible weight, and sometimes with heartbreaking risk. Just weeks before, another influencer, Sophia Chung, had died while taking a photo near a waterfall. The parallels were haunting. Young women building lives online, lost in the blink of an eye while doing what they loved. Xiao Qiumei didn't chase fame. She chased the sky. She climbed high, both literally and metaphorically, to build a better life for her children and to break barriers in a job few women dared to touch. Her legacy isn't just the videos she left behind, it's the space she carved out for others like her. And now, in the silence that follows her fall, her voice still echoes, a soft reminder of how fragile and precious life can be, even in the strongest hands.